Welcome to Interview Skills 101. In this tutorial, we'll be talking about how you can prepare yourself for the interview stage of the recruitment process. Whether you're simply preparing yourself in general, just as part of your job search strategy, or if you've reached the interview stage of the interview process, I want to congratulate you actually, especially if you have an interview coming up. That means your cover letter and your CV have obviously done their job with getting you through to this stage. So just a note here, I make no apologies for stating the obvious in some places. We are often asked by employers to remind our students of some of the things that kind of go without saying. So just bear with me as I'm going to say them anyway, just as a reminder. For everyone, interviews can be a really nerve-wracking process, but rest assured that the employer actually does want you to do your best. They want to find those jewels within you and will use a whole range of interview styles to find them. So, what we'll be covering will be in three parts: what and how to prepare, some tips on presentation, and how you can get in some practice. At the end, I'll provide you with a range of links to more resources, and you'll know that they're coming up by this red symbol here. If at the end of this tutorial you still have some questions, you can email careers@otago.ac.nz, and the link will be in the last slide too. Now, I always say proper preparation prevents poor performance. And part of that preparation is getting in some practice. So we'll be looking at preparation, presentation, because they're what matters most, and then finding ways and how you can get some practice in too. But first, a bit about the various interview styles recruiters use during this stage of the recruitment process. So what you can expect is a range of one or any number of these. The traditional interview itself, whether face-to-face or virtual, is one thing you can expect, and that is what we'll concentrate on mostly. However, there are many other recruitment tools the employer may use, and I'll quickly talk you through each of them. Traditionally, the interview could be with one person or with a panel of many, sometimes even up to as many as 5, but that's not very common. With the COVID-19 lockdown, recruiters had to use Zoom and Skype, but this is often used anyway. So you can have several interviews. Often recruiters call candidates to ask a few basic questions to find out about what you know about the role. And the telephone call will be random, but the recruiter will usually ask you if now is the right time. So if it's not, say so and arrange another time that will suit you better. These days, video recordings are often used too. So typically, you'll be sent a link where you are asked some questions and have a certain amount of time to record or write your answer or answers. Now, group interviews could be where a group of candidates are interviewed all at once. And networking events might be organised by employers where you are invited to a morning tea or spend an afternoon with them. Some have even organised social evenings where other employees are there so you can see who their people are in the team, and they'll be seeing how you interact with others. And it gives the people that you may be working with an opportunity to be part of that recruitment process as well. Assessment centres could be anything from a couple of hours to a full day. And this is where you're given various tasks to do. There'll be more on this in the next slide. Psychometric testing can be testing anything such as numerical skills, logic and reasoning. There are many different tools used, and if you Google psych tests, you can access some samples and get some practice of doing these. As indicated here, you'll see that I have a link to some useful websites on that too. Employers may even ask you to prepare a case study or ask you how you would approach a particular situation. This will test your technical, clinical, or professional competency. So on assessment centres, as they are commonly used and are probably the least known about, assessment centres are designed to test various desired skills such as teamwork, how you communicate, leadership, or how you cope under pressure. Typically, they could ask you to do a presentation or take part in a group discussion, do a panel interview, some role play exercises, or an in-tray exercise, which will have you do some task related to the role. Things to remember are teamwork is key, so be nice and encourage others. Other participants aren't necessarily your competitors, because remember, the employer may take multiple people. Know what value you bring and participate fully, as they can only judge you by what you do and what you say. Be mindful of what you'll wear so that you'll be comfortable and yet look professional. So participate actively and enthusiastically. Be yourself. Listen to the instructions and to the other participants, and you'll be fine. Again, the last slide has a link to more information on this. So, what are they looking for? If you were to put yourself in the employer's shoes for a moment, what do you think that they're looking for? Generally, attitude and authenticity are important, and ultimately the decision is about finding the right cultural fit. What would the employer's customers, clients, patients, or consumers, what would their experience be of dealing with you? Communications are key, and that's for any role. So they will be looking at how you communicate and interact with others. How personable are you? How will you interact with the other team members? Of course, they'll want to know that you have the technological skills to do the job. Maybe not all to do the job fully at the start, but enough to have you rely on you to know where to start and where you'll find the information that you need. They may be looking for your motivation and drive. Why do you want to work for them? And they will be looking at your experiences and how these can translate into the role. For this, you can draw on all your experiences from your community work, part-time jobs, sporting activities, group projects you've been involved in, etc., etc. Remember, many of the skills that you develop through these activities are transferable, so they don't have to be role-specific to be relevant. So let's look at what you can do as part of your preparation. First of all, have another look at the job description and the original job advertisement too. You would have done this to put your CV and cover letter together. Now it's time to review those documents again. Know exactly what you put into them. You would have taken some time to analyze the requirements of the role. Now think again about what the employer will be looking for. Gather what you can about the role. You might decide to make a personal visit or a phone call. You may have information from your placement there or somewhere similar. Then research the organisation. Their website's a good starting point for this. What's been in the news about them? What awards have they won? Projects they've completed? Key areas of expertise? Recent deals or cases? Who are their competitors? What demographic do they mostly serve? What is the organisation's mission and values? What can you learn about its brand? What is important to this business? You can even use LinkedIn. Have a look at who's interviewing you. What else do you think you can find about the organisation? And then look at where that organisation sits within the sector or the industry as a whole, both nationally and internationally, so that you get a real good picture of what's important to that employer. It will also help you formulate some of your questions to ask at the end of the interview. So once you've done your research, you'll be in a much better position to prepare your answers to some typical questions. Usually the interviewer will start off with some warm-up questions that are designed to get the conversation started and to help you settle down. Ironically, people really struggle with this "tell us a bit about yourself" question. This is not the time to tell your life story, okay? But it is the opportunity to give them some of your unique selling points. What makes you you? What is the important aspects of you? Some of those key points. You might like to give 1 or 2 sentences about your past, a quick intro to you and what you studied. Then maybe a couple of sentences about where you're at currently, your current experiences, or even about an internship or placement or job you did last summer. Then follow on with what you can offer, the skills you have and how you could benefit the organisation. Maybe you'd like to add something about what you are seeking, your career goals, or where you see yourself in the future. Keep it simple, excuse me, keep it simple and keep it short. Practice it, make it concise and structured, but you still want it to come across authentically and have a natural flow. Sometimes the interviewer may look at what you have put in your interests in your CV and use this as an opener by saying, "Oh, so I see you like playing music. Can you tell us a bit about that?" The interviewer might ask some questions to determine your motivation. You can see from these last 2 questions that your research about the organisation or the company will come to really good use. In your research, think about what resonated with you. It's often helpful to think of yourself actually doing the job. Place yourself in your body in the future, doing what you think you'll be doing in that role. Now describe some of the good things you're experiencing. That will help you be authentic with your answers. That same exercise might help you with these questions too. While you name your strengths, give an example of how you've demonstrated each strength in the past. For example, let's say your strength is building relationships. So tell the employers about some of the relationships that you've developed recently. Some people struggle with answering the question about weaknesses, but a good way to turn this around on a positive note is to say how you've overcome this weakness. Now, everybody has weaknesses, so don't worry about admitting to yours. In fact, being able to do this shows that you've developed some self-awareness and are prepared to put the effort into overcoming it. Likewise, for this last question, think about some of the things that you may do to overcome the challenge. So finish by talking about something positive again. It's highly likely the interviewer will be asking you some behavioural-based questions. These are a gauge of more general competencies and are interview questions that require you to provide real live examples as a basis of your answers. For the employer, one way to predict how someone will behave in a certain situation is to find out how they've behaved in the past. So for these questions, I suggest you prepare 6 to 8 real-life examples, scenarios, or stories. Have them ready in your kitty. And there's more about this to be found in our interview skills booklet available through our website. So here's a framework that you can use to ensure you give full, complete answers. The acronym's commonly known as STAR, but I say you want to start the job. So I've added that little bit extra at the end to have you stand out from the other candidates. Firstly, you describe in 1 or 2 sentences, it's not a big long story, a recent situation, a challenge or a problem or a goal. You'll want to offer enough backstory to provide context and a clear description of what you were trying to achieve and why, that being the task. Next, describe the actions you took to address the issue. Not what the proverbial we did or what I always do or you know how you go about this and you do this. No, give a specific example and show your thinking and approach. Mention any relevant skills or methods used. Then tell them what you did, what you said and how you said it, and to whom. What were the reactions of the people or the person involved? Highlight the obstacles overcome and the creative solutions you used. Then give a couple of sentences about the result. All good stories have a happy ending, right? So describe yours. Outline any tangible results and or feedback that you received from clients, the manager, co-worker, or whatever. Then discuss lessons learned and how you continue to apply them or what you would do differently next time. You may choose a non-happy ending, in which case the latter part of the answer, what this experience taught you, is even more important. So now that we've talked about your preparation, next thing to make note of is presentation. So first, impressions count for all types of interviews, whether at the phone, the video, or face-to-face. And here's where I'll be saying some of those things about face-to-face interviews that go without saying. But like I said earlier, as a reminder, I'm going to say them anyway. So, dress professionally. Fit in with the dress code of the organisation, but feel comfortable. Bear in mind, it's better to come overdressed than underdressed. And pay attention to your grooming, your personal grooming. If, for example, and I've had one employer say to me, Joe, for goodness sake, if they've had a coffee before the interview, ask them to have some water afterwards or have a mint. Okay, know where you're going and where you're going to park even. I've even gone and done a dummy run beforehand so that I get the timing right. You don't want to arrive late. In fact, you want to be there about 5 minutes early. So be sure to be nice to everyone, from the receptionist to the other people in the waiting room. Walking in the door, follow their lead and sit where and when they ask you to sit. Just ordinary etiquette. Now, we're all a bit wary of the handshake now, but when things get back to normal, whatever that looks like, and if you're going to offer handshake, give a good firm one. Smiling goes a long way, as does having eye contact. If you are being video interviewed, make sure that you're looking directly into the camera rather than at your screen. Body language and how you sit can have a big impact, so you want to be up straight and dignified with your hands resting on the table. So become aware of some of those nervous habits and try to keep yourself from doing these by putting your attention or your focus onto the interviewers. Have enthusiasm in your voice and be professional with the language that you use. One thing you might like to do to help you with how you present yourself is to view this TED Talk. You may have already heard about the power stance. We all know that judges are constantly being made on our body language, right? So our non-verbals govern how others think about us, but they also govern how we feel about ourselves. So this talk gives insight into what is effective in preparing yourself physiologically for the interview. It's about 21 minutes long, but stick with it. I think you'll find it's worth it. So now let's look at what you can do to practice. Remember I talked about your 6 to 8 scenarios or stories that you have in your kitty for those behavioural-based questions? Well, now we're going to look at some typical behavioural-based questions so you can start practicing using those scenarios in the START framework. I'll focus on the typically used but more commonly asked questions can be found in our interview skills booklet. Teamwork is often asked about. Remember, you can draw on examples in your part-time work or projects or team sports and think about talking about what you did, how you contributed to the team effort, not the proverbial we. For questions about problem solving, often it is the originality and the approach you took that is of real value here. Not all interviewers will give you the further probing questions like the what steps did you take to deal with it. So by preparing your examples or scenarios using the START framework, you'll know that you'll be giving complete answers and be giving yourself the best chance to reveal your gems. A question around conflict of some sort is a good way of determining how you might handle confrontational situations or a difficult customer or a stressed out so-called non-compliant patient or working with different personalities in the team. In thinking about a goal you achieved, it could be as part of a group or a team or an individual goal. Sometimes employers ask about a time when you didn't achieve a goal or experience some sort of setback. They'll be interested in learning about your ways in which you demonstrate your resilience here. Communication is always important, so be prepared to answer a question about your communication experience, whether that be through doing a presentation or listening to a customer's request or getting a complex or technical point across to a group or giving feedback to someone. So have a story about this in your kitty. Sometimes you might be asked about how you have influenced a decision. Maybe you have experienced someone more experienced than you make an incorrect assessment or a diagnosis, or you've been in a position where you wanted to question someone's reasoning. How did you go about this? This will also demonstrate your communication skills. Remember to draw on one-time event. Then towards the end of the interview, the employer will ask you if you have any questions of your own. It is important to have questions ready for them. It really doesn't look good not to have any. But don't ask about questions that are easily answered by having a simple look at their website or anything to do with remuneration or will there be travel involved or asking why you should work for them. What you could ask is what they like most about working for the organisation. What is the most interesting project or case or customer they've worked with? What advice they'd give someone like yourself joining their team? Or what makes a really successful, and fill it in with the role. How will I know that I'm doing a good job? You will no doubt have some other questions of your own based on what you found through your research of the organisation. So what else might you ask? So those are some of the commonly asked questions you can practice on. Another resource available to you is The Big Interview. Now this is a program available to you through our website for which you will use your standard student login. In this program, you can record yourself answering questions. You can delete and re-record until you're happy with the finished video. There are a lot of written tips and video clips to help you with everything from CVs and cover letters to interviews. So it's a really great resource. Here are some other ways that you can practice. You can attend Interview Skills 201 or book an appointment with a career advisor for a mock interview, or for both. And for both of these, you can book on Career Hub. Talking to people you already know or who you are working, or people you know in the industry, or people who you've worked with in the past. Talking with your friends or a family member can work, or you could even just practice in front of the mirror. At the end of the interview, remember to thank the interviewers for their time, and you may even send them an email afterwards. But keep a positive mindset. Often people really are a poor judge of their own performance. They think, oh, I did a terrible job, but in actual fact, it probably isn't as bad as you think. Hardly ever, though, do people ace interviews. So even if you don't get that job, think about the questions you were asked and use it as a learning experience. So before we end, here are the links to the more information and resources I promised you. At the Career Development Centre website, look under Job Search. Come and have a mock interview with a member of the Careers team. Check out Career Hub for workshops, employers on campus, and remember to have a look at Amy Cuddy's TED Talk. So that's it from me. All the best and good luck.